An exciting first round of the 2020 high school football playoffs is in the books, and now we head on to round two. Welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. My name is Alec Etheridge, the managing editor here at the Shelby County Reporter, and the opening week of the playoffs, perhaps one of the best that we've ever seen in Shelby County, and definitely the best in my 4 years here covering high school sports in the county. So that leads us into what should be an exciting second round of the postseason. Some huge matchups on the radar this Friday night for local teams, and just to have 5 teams advancing to the second round of the postseason is just unbelievable. For the first time since 1997 that 5 teams from Shelby County have made it to the second round of the playoffs. We've had 4 make it in 2005 and 2007, but no more than 4 in the last 23 years, and we break that streak this year, have 5 teams with big first-round victories that have advanced to the second round of the postseason. The Shelby County Wildcats, they lose their opening round game last week. They are done for the season. And the Pelham Panthers, a tough game against Lee Montgomery, trailed that one 21-7 there in the second half, came back, made that a fun game, end up losing that one 23-21. They trailed 23-7 at the half, to be exact, actually. Came back and lost that one 23-21, a tough game to come back in, and they just fell a little bit short, so their season comes to an end as well. But that's a very young Pelham football team that's on the rise, should be really good next year. We were that close to having 6 teams in the second round of the postseason. But speaking of the second round, some huge matchups to take place this Friday night. One's going to take place right here at Helena High School, and it's not going to feature the Helena Huskies. The Huskies actually traveling to Spanish Fort this Friday night in their second round game. The Montevallo Bulldogs, though, they get to play here at Helena High School. Their field's still damaged from the hurricane that came through a couple of weeks ago, so they get to play host to a second-round matchup this Friday night right here at Helena High School. Going to be a huge matchup for them after one of the biggest upsets of the week last Friday night in round 1. In addition to that, the Oak Mountain Eagles, a huge upset last Friday as well. They advance on to the second round of the playoffs this Friday with a rematch against the Hoover Buccaneers. The Thompson Warriors, the defending 7A state champions, they also advanced, and they get a rematch as well. They'll take on Hewitt-Trussville in a big rematch, a game that was actually pretty tightly contested when you look at the final score from earlier this season. Thompson's second closest game of the season, a 14-point win against the Huskies earlier in the season. As we mentioned, the Helena Huskies traveling to Spanish Fort. Montevallo, they will be right here at Helena in a big matchup. We'll talk about that one. And then the Briarwood Lions, they have a huge road matchup, a chance to make a statement in the state as they travel to take on number 1 Oxford in the second round of the playoffs after a big comeback last week against Hartselle. Trailed that game 14-3, came back and won that game 31-17 with a 28-3 second half. So Briarwood advances to the second round of the playoffs thanks in large part to a strong performance from Tyler Wall. So let's jump in. We've got a ton to talk about, some big games on the radar this Friday night in the second round of the playoffs, and we've also got some stars to hand out from the first round of the playoffs in our SCR Stars of the Week segment. So we're going to jump in. We're going to talk about all the games coming up this Friday night in the second round, name our SCR Stars of the Week, and get you ready for a big Friday night of high school football. For the 4th consecutive year, the Thompson Warriors are in the quarterfinals of the Class 7A playoffs, and they're looking for their 4th consecutive trip to the semifinals with a big matchup this Friday night in a rematch against the Hewitt-Trussville Huskies. For the second time this year, these two teams will meet, but this time around, a lot more on the line, the season on the line to be exact. And this go around, the Warriors get the Huskies on their home field. Last time in the regular season, Thompson had to travel out to Hewitt-Trussville, picked up a 35-21 win, really took command of that game. It was a few explosive plays by Hewitt-Trussville in the run game behind Armani Goodwin, Sean Jackson, a pretty strong run game that they've had throughout the season. They were able to bust off a few big plays on the ground, but other than that, Thompson played one of their most complete games of the season. They've been a little bit inconsistent defensively early in the season, really played great defense other than 3-4 explosive plays that they gave up in that game on the ground. And the offense had a strong game as well. They put up a ton of those points in the first half and really just kind of grinded out the win in the second half to run more of the clock. So now you've got a Hewitt-Trussville team looking for redemption in this matchup, but you've got a Thompson team that is hungry, looking to defend their Class 7A state championship, sitting at 11-0 right now. They know what's on the line. They know what it's going to take to get back to the Class 7A state title game, and they've got to feel good about themselves right now simply because they've beaten both Hoover and Hewitt-Trussville. Thompson sits at number 1 in the standings. Those two teams sit at number 2 and number 3 in the Class 7A standings. So you've got a Thompson team that has taken on one of the most difficult schedules and sits undefeated. In addition to beating those two top 3 teams, they've also beaten number 1 Oxford in Class 6A and number 2 Mountain Brook in Class 6A. So this is a Thompson team that's taken on the best, and they've proved they can win those big games. This week, they're going to have another chance to prove it, and in a bigger situation than they've had to the rest of the season. And we've seen them at times face some adversity later in the season. Hewitt-Trussville, Spain Park, Hoover, all played them close at times throughout those games, but Thompson really found their groove, was able to pull away and just drift to comfortable victories at the end by running the clock in the second half. And that's what you're going to want to happen again in this matchup. You're going to want a fast start on the offensive side of the football. And when you look at that offense that they've got, one of the best in the state, if not the best in the state, possibly one of the best in the country, led by junior quarterback Connor Harrell, who's just burst onto the scene this year. 3,000-plus yards passing, dominant at the position. And a big reason for that, he's got a solid offensive line, obviously, but look at the weapons he's got to take advantage of. You look at guys like Ryan Peppins, who's really stepped up and been one of the breakout players this year because of his speed at the receiver position. And then you've got J.B. Mitchell, a big downfield threat at receiver. Trey Roberson, another downfield threat, a guy that can make plays after the catch. And then you've got Sam Reynolds, and then you've got Jarrett Crockett, who was injured throughout a portion of the season, but has really come along late in the year with his health. Was going to be around 1,000-yard back regardless, and now the last few weeks really regaining that strength in his health. Had a big game last week in the first round of the playoffs with 100-plus rushing yards. I expect him to be big and take a lot of that pressure off of Harrell as well. But that offense just so dominant, and when you look at it from a defensive standpoint, trying to prepare for that offense, that's what's difficult, because you look across the field, and at the high school level, it's just so difficult to have somebody to match up with arguably a Division I player, future Division I player at every position there on the defensive side. So for Hewitt-Trussville in this game, that's going to be their biggest challenge, is finding people to match up with that difficult Thompson offense. Now, this is a Hewitt-Trussville offense that is built to upset the Warriors. That's what they have to rely on. They have to control the tempo of this game and find the open seams in the run game. You look at Armani Goodwin, a guy that's been one of the best running backs in the state for the last couple of years. He's going to look for a big game in this one, as well as Sean Jackson. Those are two guys that both had explosive plays against Thompson in the first matchup this season. They could have a slightly better game. That's going to be huge in this game, the second go-around. That said, they're going to have to find some kind of balance in the pass game as well. They were so one-dimensional in that first matchup that Thompson was able to really just focus on the run game, and that's why you didn't see a ton of explosive plays from that dynamic running unit. But at the same time, they were able to bust off 3, 4, or 5 plays that were really big. So if they can kind of rely on that, Hewitt-Trussville can rely on the run game to open up the pass game. That's going to be key. They've got to find ways to make some big plays in the pass game if they want to upset the number 1 team. You're not going to go in and be one-dimensional against Thompson and come out with a victory. So they're too talented on that defensive side of the ball. You look at what both of these teams are doing so far this season. Thompson averaging 43.7 points per game and giving up just 14.9 points per game. Hewitt-Trussville, they're averaging 35 points per game and giving up 17.6 points per game. And in that first matchup, Thompson scored 35 points, probably could have gotten closer to 49 points had they not tried to run the clock more in the second half. Had some chances to score again in the half, but just couldn't make any big plays. Some penalties were a little bit costly. They scored 1 touchdown, and that was all they really needed to pull away in that victory. So you've got to expect that Hewitt-Trussville going to try to find ways to do some different things offensively, open up the passing lanes a little bit more, but also rely on those two heavy-duty running backs in Armani Goodwin and Sean Jackson. But overall, it's going to come down to can they stop the Thompson offense as well. This Thompson offense has been so dynamic, going to have a big game from Hewitt-Trussville's defense to have any chance, because otherwise you're playing catch-up with an offense that's just going to score every time they get the ball. So that's going to be the biggest challenge for the Huskies, finding ways to open up the passing lanes and then also playing better defense against arguably one of the best offenses in the country. Either way, it's a top 3 battle for the second time this season between these two. A trip to the semifinals on the line. Hewitt looking for the upset. Thompson knows what's on the line if they want to repeat as 7A state champions. They have got to win this game, obviously, and they know what the effort's got to be in order to do that, not just this week, but every week of the postseason moving forward, including in the semifinals and the state championship. So a big week for the Thompson Warriors as they look to defend their Class 7A state championship. After taking on such a difficult regular season schedule and off to a 4-0 start for the first time in school history, you just felt like Oak Mountain was primed to pull an upset in the first round of the playoffs, and that's exactly what they did. They beat Austin, number 9 in the Class 7A standings, 41-28 to advance to the second round of the postseason for the first time since 2014. And now they look to advance to the semifinals, or I should say the third round of the playoffs, for just the second time in school history and first time since 2005. So a big opportunity for the Oak Mountain Eagles this Friday night. They've got the talent to try to find a way to upset Hoover in this matchup, but you look at this game, it is a rematch from a game earlier in the season that Hoover won 42-7. So Oak Mountain's going to have to turn around 35 points in this matchup to somehow pull off this upset and advance on to the semifinals of the Class 7A playoffs. It's going to be a tall task and a big opportunity nonetheless for the Eagles, who have really, like I said, they've played such a difficult schedule. They came into the season not scared of anybody. Whether they were going to be able to beat teams, that was up to them, but they felt like they could compete with every team that they faced this year. They weren't as scared with some older players of the Thompsons, Hoovers, and Hewitts, and it showed at times this season. Now, against those three teams, they struggled in the regular season, but we also saw them turn a page, I feel like, in the Clay Chalkville game at the end of the year. That was a 6A team in Clay Chalkville, and Oak Mountain loses that game 21-14, but it was a top 10 Clay Chalkville team, one that's going to compete for the 6A title this year. And when you look at what Oak Mountain was able to do, they had a couple of explosive plays on offense, but more importantly, the defense really stepped up and made some big plays to keep them in that game. Now, they lose it, but I think that gave them some confidence and a determination going into that first-round matchup with Austin. And you look at that game, they fell behind 14-0, but they weren't scared. They didn't shy away from the moment. They were able to score. They went up 24-14 with 24 unanswered points there, and in large part thanks to Evan Smith, who had a 300-yard-plus rushing performance from the quarterback position. A big reason the Oak Mountain Eagles have had success this year as a third-year starter there, at the quarterback position. So you continue to see this Oak Mountain team gain some confidence on the offensive side of the football, but that defense has been key throughout the year. It's one of the best defenses they've had in several years. So what's going to be the key this week for them to be able to pull off the upset against the Hoover Buccaneers? It's going to come on that defensive side of the ball. We obviously know that Evan Smith and Judah Tate, quarterback-running back duo, they've got to find seams on the offense, and that's going to come down to the offensive line. The offensive line is going to have to play their most determined and physical game of the year to give those two guys some opportunities to score, but we know that they can make plays. They're going to put up some points, whether it's 14, 21, 28, and beyond. They're going to put up points in this game. What it's going to come down to is how much improved the defense has gotten since that first matchup between these two teams. In that first matchup, Hoover threw for more than 300 yards and had more than 400 yards of total offense. So they've got to play better pass defense to have any sort of chance in this game. And the scary thing is Hoover's arguably a better running team this year. So not only do you have to find a way to shut down the pass game this go around, But if you do that, they're probably going to try to find a way to be successful running the ball. You've got to shut that down as well. So that's what's going to be the difficult responsibility for Oak Mountain and the defense this Friday night. They've got to find a way to improve on that side of the ball to have any shot in this game, because Oak Mountain's offense is talented and they can score some points, but at the same time, going up against such a physical Hoover team, scoring like you do against other teams is probably not going to happen in this matchup. They may get to 21, 28, somewhere in that range, which would be a huge improvement on that side of the ball from their first go-around in this matchup, but Hoover could easily put up 35, 42, 49 points if Oak Mountain's defense doesn't show up. So for them to have the best chance, got to play a perfect game on both sides of the ball. You look at what Hoover's done so far this season, scoring 39.5 points per game and giving up just 18.6 points per game. Oak Mountain scoring 30.3 points per game, giving up 27.5 points per game. So Hoover's got the advantage in this matchup. It's all about determination for Oak Mountain. Can they be determined enough to pull off this upset second week in a row? I know they have a ton of confidence in the program right now. They're not scared to go in and play this game. It's just a matter of actually performing on the field. 0-18 all-time against the Hoover Buccaneers. Couldn't picture a better time to pick up that first victory as the Oak Mountain Eagles look to punch a ticket to the semifinals of the Class 7A playoffs. In just the second year under head coach Matthew Forrester, the Briarwood Lions in the 6A classification for the first time since 2015 have had an incredible run this season. A first-round victory last week in the playoffs against Hartselle. That was a game that they trailed, like I said earlier, 14-3. They jumped up 3-0, gave up 14 unanswered, trailed 14-3 at the half. Really weren't having any success doing anything on the offensive side of the football. The defense was playing fine in the first half, but the offense had struggled. That changed in the second half, not only because the defense continued to make plays and be big, but also because of Tyler Wall stepping over from the defensive side and helping out the offense as well. He had 4 touchdowns in the second half and 2 interceptions for a remarkable performance, right around 100 yards rushing in the second half alone as well, to help the Lions pull off a comeback. 28-3, they outscored Hartselle in the second half for a 31-17 victory to advance to the second round of the playoffs. Luke Rebels, another big game. Christopher Vizina also continued to show promise at the quarterback position. So just overall, the offense stepped up in the second half and made big play after big play, was able to pull away and win that game. And now they advance to the second round where they get a matchup with none other than number 1 Oxford. Quite the reward for a successful season in the 6A classification. They get the defending 6A state champions and the number 1 team in the Class 6A standings in the second round. And with that comes a huge opportunity, because if you can win this game, then you've proven that you can win a state championship this season in Class 6A. Now, it's going to be difficult. This is an Oxford team that's just playing lights-out football again this season. Only loss of the season came to Thompson, and they put up the most points that Thompson's given up so far this year in that opening game loss of the season. Since then, Oxford has reeled off win after win. They sit at 10-1 overall on the season and are just playing great football so far this season, especially on the offensive side of the football. You look at what they've done on that side, 45.4 points per game offensively, giving up just 18.5 points per game so far this season. So playing really good football on both sides, led by quarterback Trey Higgins, and that's going to be the key. Can Briarwood's defense, which has been tremendous this season, find a way to shut down the all-state quarterback and the defending state champ there at Oxford? If they can find a way to stop him, get some pressure on him in the backfield, that's going to be key. And Briarwood's got the tools to do it. Briarwood's tackled some pretty good offenses so far this year. They've taken on a couple of 7A opponents. They've played a difficult 6A schedule, but they haven't seen an offense like this, and that's going to be the key. Can they take down arguably the best offense in the 6A classification? And you look at what Oxford's done, they haven't faced a defense quite like this yet this season. Now, Thompson's defense at the 7A level, the most difficult that they faced, probably a little bit better than Briarwood's, but you look overall at what Briarwood does good, and it's really manage how the game is run. They like to play it to their tempo, be physical, and they can get in the backfield. So a big game for Oxford's offensive line to be able to slow down that Briarwood front seven and keep them from getting pressure on Trey Higgins in the backfield. But you look at Briarwood, the defense giving up just 11 points per game this year continues to be one of the best defenses in the state year after year, even though they have jumped back in to the 6A classification. In 5A this year, if Briarwood was in 5A this year, likely would win a state championship. That's how talented they are and how successful they have been throughout the season. So you've got to expect that they're going to be ready to go in this game. And with the difficult schedule they've taken on, I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I do think Oxford should be favored to win. I do think they will win. But at the end of the day, you look at guys that are determined on that Briarwood defense. They're just playing such good football on that side of the ball. They're not going to shy away from this matchup whatsoever. And then you look at the growth that Briarwood has had on the offensive side of the football. Christopher Vizina has gone over 200 yards passing the last few games, really has stepped up his game. Some of the receivers are stepping up. Now, they can't drop balls. I continue to see that week after week. They've dropped several balls that they need to catch, and it happened last week as well, that could have gone for big plays, either a touchdown or kept drives alive. They've got to continue to find ways to catch the balls that Vizina's throwing to him. Vizina's got to come out and be comfortable as well. But you've also got one of the best running backs in the state, Luke Rebels, coming off another stellar performance in the semifinals, or in the first round of the playoffs. We'll talk more about him in the SCR Stars of the Week segment at the end of the show. But he just continues to perform week after week, and that's largely because the offensive line is setting up not only running room for him, but really selling the screen pass and doing great at blocking on the screen pass. Briarwood is so successful at that play. That's got to be a big emphasis when you look at that from the Oxford defense. If they can shut down the screen pass, and if they can shut down Tyler Wall coming in from the defensive side and running the Wildcat offense, they can shut those two things down from Briarwood's offense, then you've got an Oxford team that's likely going to pull away for the victory. But at the end of the day, nobody's been able to stop that this season. This is a Briarwood team that's very physical, very methodical, and they're well coached. They know how to handle these big moments. They're going to be ready for this matchup. I don't see this being a rout. I think you're going to see a very determined Briarwood team that keeps this game pretty close. I'm not sure they have what it takes to pull off the upset because Oxford is the defending state champ, because of the schedule they've taken on. You got to give the edge to Oxford in this matchup, but don't be surprised if Briarwood has a chance in the second half. If they can force some early turnovers with that defense and get a quick 7-0, 10, 14-0 lead, somewhere in that range, you've got to feel good about your chances with how good your defense has played so far this season. So going to be a lot of fun either way for the Lions to get this opportunity in their first year back in the 6A classification. The last couple of years, 2014 and 2015, they did not play well in the 6A classification. I think their overall record was right around 9-14. So a big year for them already this season. We'll see if they can continue the trend, have another big win, pull off the upset against number 1 Oxford in the second round of the playoffs. There may not be a more clutch team in the state than the Helena Huskies as we sit here on their home field getting you ready for another week of the playoffs. And this is a Helena team. A couple weeks ago, we didn't know what their playoff fate was as far as their seeding. Could have been a 4 seed, could have been a 2 seed. They take on the 3-time defending Class 5A state champion UMS Wright. Trailed that game 7-0 early, made it 7-6 at the half, and then came back to win 12-7 in the second half with great defensive play there in the fourth quarter and a big touchdown late as well to pick up that win. And then you look, they earn home field advantage, the 2 seed with that win. And last week they fall behind 19-0 to Carver Montgomery at the half. But don't worry, they were clutch again in the second half, scored 22 unanswered there in the second half. It's funny, at halftime I tweeted they were going to need at least 20 unanswered to even have a chance in that game. They scored 22 unanswered, did not give up a single point in the second half, come back to win that game 22-19. The defense playing really good in the second half. The offense continues to wear down opposing defenses and plays well in the second half as well, and that's been the big storyline. They've just been such a physical team early in games. They've fallen behind early all season long, but they haven't panicked because they know that their offense, the way that it runs, is wearing down defenses, and they know that their defense is still fresh in the second half enough to make big plays. And it's worked throughout the season, and this week, yet again, it's the matchup that sets up perfectly for what they like to do. They'll be taking on Spanish Fort in the second round of the playoffs, so a long trip down south to South Alabama as they take on Spanish Fort this Friday night. But this is a team that likes to play the same kind of game as Helena. You look at what Spanish Fort has done so far this season, scoring 24.4 points per game, so not lighting things up on the scoreboard. Their defense, however, is what's shined, giving up 14.5 points per game. It's a team that scored 28 or less in 6 games this season, and they beat McAdory just 26-13 last week. So I think Helena's a better team than McAdory. I don't think you'll see Helena give up a ton more points than that, and I think the offense could easily hover between 14 and 28 points. So it's going to be a very similar game. You've got to expect that Helena's got another big chance to pull off the upset, and it's because this plays right into their hands. It's the exact same thing I've said the last couple of weeks. This is a low-scoring offense they're taking on and a good defense they're taking on, but it's the same story for the Helena Huskies, a team that wants to come in and control things offensively with their ground game. Marquise Johnson and Kobe Hughes running the football, being physical and wearing down the defense in the first half, and then coming out and imposing their will in the second half to finally score some points. I expect that to be the case again this week. They've been fresh. They're healthy. I expect them to continue to do that this week. And then you look at what this defense has done. You look at Helena in general this season. It's been an interesting season. They come into the season, they lose 30 seniors off of last year's team that was one of the best in school history. The number 1 seed, win the region championship, and they lose in the first round of the playoffs. So they were determined to get back, win a playoff game this year, and they've done that. But you also look at the way this season has unfolded. Started out 1-2. They gave up 27 and 28 in losses to Chelsea and Wetumpka. Still not a ton of points they gave up because the offense has struggled, though. They weren't able to win those games early in the season. They bounced back with a win after that, and then they had to have 3 weeks where they set out. They canceled 2 games, one of which was a region matchup with Pelham, and then they had a game canceled against them, Chilton County, another region matchup. So that was 3 consecutive weeks of not playing football, but they bounced back with 4 consecutive wins after that. You look at the way this team has played since then, and it's largely because they had such a long gap and a long break. They're so fresh and healthy, but this defense, not only has the team won 4 in a row and 5 total since those 2 losses, but the defense has given up 19 or less in all 5 of those games and in 6 of their 8 head-to-head games so far this season, giving up 28 or less in every game of the season. Those 2 games they lost were very tight battles. They lose 28-22 and 27-23, so by 6 points or less in both matchups. This is going to be a very similar game to what we've seen the last couple of weeks and to what we saw in those 2 losses. It's going to be a tight game. Helena's going to have their chances. They're not going to get blown off the football field with the way that they play. They're going to turn the clock with their offense, be physical, and then the defense is going to come out and continue to play good football. And against a Spanish Fort team that's not lighting up the scoreboard, I would expect Helena to have success in this game. Honestly, would not be surprised if they pull off the upset, if they can advance to the quarterfinals of the playoffs. It's obviously going to take a big effort in this game, but you look at what they do successfully. This game, again, playing into their hands, and they're as confident as they've been this entire season now with 5 wins in a row, 2 wins against very good football teams, very physical football teams that play similar styles to them. I would expect you'll see this Helena team on Friday night have a strong chance to make some big second-half plays. If they can continue to do what they do best, they have the chance to pull off the upset and advance to the quarterfinals. So now to the game that will actually take place right here at Helena High School. And that's going to feature the Montevallo Bulldogs playing host to Handley in the second round of the playoffs. And what a story for Montevallo this season. One of the best stories I've seen in my time here at the Shelby County Reporter. Montevallo, they lost probably 90% of their offensive talent and most of their team from last year, a team that made it to the first round of the playoffs but lost in the first round of the playoffs, hadn't been to the second round since 2016. Enter head coach Blake Boren, his first year at the helm, despite losing guys like J.J. Evans, Jamarius Carter, Dion Gilliland, Malika Bennett. Those guys all huge keys to the offense's success the last couple of seasons. This team has come in this year, and they have played extremely well with guys that honestly haven't played football in several years or possibly ever getting time as starters this season. It's just been remarkable to watch the way that they've grown together as a football team this season. And last week, a big upset victory in the first round of the playoffs against St. James. They win that one 27-21 in overtime, just a back-and-forth game the entire way, and they made big plays down the stretch to, again, win a football game, and that has become just common theme down the stretch of their schedule. You look at their last 4 games in a row, they've won all 4 of them, and all in tight contests, 29-28, 40-33, 27-20, and 27-21. So all of those games decided by 7 points or less, and they end up coming out on top. That shows some clutch play. You're not scared of the big moments, and you got to figure if they have a chance again in this matchup against Handley, you got to feel comfortable that they'll make the plays down the stretch yet again to pull off another big win. Now, this is a Handley team ranked inside the top 10 of the 4A standings. Montevallo, no stranger to taking on good 4A teams this year, though. They played number 1 American Christian, the favorite to win the state championship, put up 30-plus points on them. They played Bibb County as well, struggled a little bit more offensively, but also showed some promise at times in that game, especially going in to the halftime break. So to see them compete against good teams, they're not going to shy away from this moment. I think that those 2 teams that they played in region play more difficult than this challenge against Handley, so you got to expect, at least for the first half, Montevallo is going to be in this football game, and then it comes down to how fresh are they in the second half and what kind of plays can they make there. You look at this team in Handley, they're sitting at number 5 in the 4A standings, and they've been a little bit inconsistent at times. Overall, this is a team, they've played some difficult teams at times, but they've played some not as good teams, some average teams, and haven't won in blowouts. They've won some pretty tight games. That said, they're coming off, they ended the regular season with a 15-14 loss to a really good Central Clay County team. So this game is very tricky. I do think Montevallo has a chance. I think last week's game to pick up that upset victory against St. James has them as confident as they can be going into this matchup. I didn't expect them to be any higher than a 3 or 4 seed this year. They earned a 3 seed, but just to be in the playoffs was a remarkable story. Now to win a playoff game, pulling off the upset, another remarkable story. So how far can they carry it on this season is the question right now. And you look at this team, the athletes that they have, they're still so young. In a couple of years, this could be a state championship level Montevallo football team. Right now, they're so young, you just don't know what you're going to get in this matchup. But we've seen them play so well in big games and in close games down the stretch. You got to feel like they at least have a chance to pull off another upset this week. They're confident. They've got a head coach that believes in them and has them playing their best football of the season. And to see where they've come from the beginning of the season to now, this is a team, like I said, started out with so many young players, inexperienced players, and now they're experienced. They know what to expect. They're going to be ready for this game. They're going to be ready to try to pull off another upset. Wouldn't be surprised if it happens. The way this team has played football this year, going to be a tall task to ask for, but this is a Montevallo team. Wouldn't be surprised to see them play another week. It's now time to hand out some stars from the opening week of the playoffs as we get to our SCR Stars of the Week segment. And a lot of players stepped up big time in the first round of the playoffs, helped their team advance on to the second round. You got to start with the Thompson Warriors, what they were able to do in a dominant first-round victory. Went up 49-0 against Grissom, ended up winning that one 49-7. Jarrett Crockett was big in that game, had a very big game on the ground, 17 carries for 121 yards and 3 touchdown runs. Also had 26 yards receiving with another touchdown. And you look at overall, Thompson's offense, the majority of their production came in the first half. So that was most of that from Jarrett Crockett came in the first half. A very strong game for him. If he continues to get going throughout the postseason, you look at the rest of that offense, and they are going to be very dangerous and dynamic, and that makes this team even scarier than they already are. You look at the passing game, Connor Harrell, another big game, didn't have to do a ton in this game. Most of his production in the first half, had 183 yards passing and 2 touchdowns on 9 of 12 passing in the game. He also had a strong showing on the ground, ran for an additional touchdown with 3 carries for 22 yards. His top target in that game was Ryan Pepins, had the majority of those 183 yards. He had 118 yards on 4 receptions with a touchdown. He was big in their first matchup with Hewitt-Trussville, just sprinted by the defense on a couple of different occasions. I wouldn't be surprised if Pepins has another big game this Friday night. Speaking of big games, it seems every week Evan Smith has a dominant game, and he did so in the first round of the playoffs to lead the Oak Mountain Eagles to an upset of number 9 Austin 41-28. Smith ran the ball 23 times for more than 300 yards, had right around 320 yards running the football in that game with 4 touchdowns. Just a remarkable performance from Evan Smith, and he seemingly does it week after week. Expect him to be determined to have another big game against Hoover on Friday night, as well as Judah Tate, who ran the ball 22 times for 120 yards and a touchdown against Austin. So those two guys are going to be key. Obviously going to have some help from the offensive line. Defense is going to have to keep you in it. But with those two guys on your side, you got to feel like Oak Mountain at least has a chance to score some points and keep up with Hoover to try to pull off the upset. Possibly the performance of the year, hands down, goes to Tyler Wall. I would say he earns the overall SCR Star of the week this week. We used to give out just one. Then there were too many good performances. We wanted to give out a list of players. But Tyler Wall was remarkable. He had not only 2 interceptions on defense, which is his natural position, plays linebacker there for the Lions, had 2 big interceptions in that game, but also 4 touchdown runs, close to 100 yards rushing, had 98 yards rushing, and also led the team in tackles with 15 tackles. So, I mean, if he was in college, that would be the Heisman moment right there. I think he's easily got to be one of the best players in the state, if not the best player in the state, especially on the defensive side of the football. Just remarkable to see what he's able to do over there. But to come in, run the Wildcat, and just physically dominate the defense from that position as well, running the football, special to see what he was able to do for the Lions as he helped them. He scored all of their touchdowns in a 31-17 victory against Hartselle. Big in that game as well, Christopher Vizina, who continues to get better each and every week of the season, finished 19 of 28 with 246 yards and no interceptions. Had a little bit of a slow start, but really bounced back there on the offensive side of the football, completed some big passes in the second half to a couple of different receivers. So that was a big comeback for Vizina in that game. It's the second or third game in a row where he's gone over 200 yards, no interceptions. Doesn't have to be big, but if he can play and manage the game like that still as a sophomore, he's got some big offers coming his way during his junior and senior seasons, but he's also going to help lead this team deep into the playoffs, maybe not just this year, but moving forward down the line. And he's also got the help of Luke Rebels, one of the best running backs in the county and across the state, especially in the 6A classification. Rebels had 17 carries for 81 yards, but also 8 receptions for 100 yards in that game. So another performance right around 200 all-purpose yards. I would expect him to have a big game against Oxford as well. For the Helena Huskies, a big opening round win last week against Carver Montgomery. You look at a couple of performances there. Marquise Johnson had the go-ahead score and an important 2-point conversion in that game for Helena. You also look at Mac Turner, had a steady game, really sparked the comeback there early in the second half with a 31 touchdown pass to J.C. Sibley midway through the third quarter that got Helena on the board, and they were off and rolling from there. And in addition to his 31-yard touchdown catch, Sibley had another big play in the game, a 30-yard touchdown pass to Colby Harris. So a big game for Sibley as well. If you can have all those guys playing well on offense, then lights out. I think Helena will win against Spanish Fort on Friday night because that gives them so much more balance and a different dynamic as well in comparison to what they're able to do so well defensively and running the football. So have that balance, and Helena's going to be in good shape on Friday night, especially with the way their defense has played. We'll mention them as well. Held Carver scoreless in the second half and picked up an interception late to seal the win in that victory. So a big night for Helena's defense as well. For the Montevallo Bulldogs, 3 guys that really stood out in that opening round upset. You look at Joseph Anderson, toted the ball 44 times in that game. He's had a few games where he's gone for 200-plus, 300-plus. He's had a dominant season, ran for 179 yards and 3 touchdowns on those 44 carries. That was a lot of weight on him. We'll see how fresh he is going into the second round. But you've also got the help of Kyle Cottingham on the offensive side of the football. You look at his performance, 11 catches for 162 yards and a touchdown, but he also plays strong defense. Coming off a 3-interception game a couple of weeks ago, he added 5 tackles and an interception in that first-round win as well. And Cole Dennis for the Montevallo defense played well. Also had 7 tackles, including 2 sacks and a big late tackle to help preserve the 27-21 victory. So a dominant showing for Cole Dennis there for the Montevallo Bulldogs as well. That does it for all of our SCR Stars of the week from round 1 of the playoffs. But with 5 teams in the playoffs continuing, I expect another big showing this Friday night as teams look to punch tickets either to the quarterfinals for 6A or below or the semifinals for Class 7A. That's going to do it for this week's Shelby County High School football show. As always, I appreciate all of you for tuning in because it's going to be an exciting night of high school football this Friday night, perhaps one of the most exciting we've had in the county's history. Just the first time since 1997 that we've had 5 teams in the second round of the playoffs. Got to feel good about at least one of those teams, if not more, advancing on to the next round of the postseason. Thompson still remains the heavy favorite in Class 7A, a big matchup and a top 3 battle for them against Hewitt-Trussville. Briarwood traveling to take on number 1 Oxford. Oak Mountain traveling to take on number 2 Hoover. Some big matchups there. Then you look at teams like Helena traveling to Spanish Fort, a chance for a big win for them as well. The Montevallo Bulldogs hosting a game right here at Helena High School, taking on Handley in a big game for them, a chance to advance to the quarterfinals in Blake Boren's first year as head coach. So a lot on the line this Friday night, so many exciting matchups, but just to be in the situation with 5 teams in the second round, a remarkable showing, and a congratulations to all of these teams. We came into the season with so much unknown, didn't know how much of the season we would get to play, and now it's been a historic season. These kids have fought so hard just to be on the field, given up so much of a normal routine, and now it's all worth it because they have a chance to continue playing football and a chance to vie for some state championships. So an exciting night coming up. Can't wait to bring it to you all. I will see you all from Facebook Live before the game. We'll have an early pregame show, hopefully around 5 or 5:30 this Friday night, so we can get it all in and talk about all of the exciting action to take place. I'll see you all then. Until then, hope you enjoy the rest of your week and get excited for a big night of high school football.